Our next speaker, Brandon Pierpont, who is from the Climate Policy Initiative, he will be sharing us his take on the future of grid planning and one key characteristic of it, which is flexibility. Brandon at CPI works with their energy finance team, and he focuses his time on renewable energy finance, electricity market design, as well as utility business models. Please welcome Brandon.
Great, thank you. Can everyone hear me through this? So I'm going to need a cheat sheet. That was amazing, Zach. So let's get started. Climate Policy Initiative, which is my organization. We're a research and advisory organization that is really focused on driving a low-cost transition to low-carbon energy through innovations in policy and finance. So, as we all know, the cost of wind and solar are getting really cheap, really cheap. So wind has declined by over 60% in just 9 years, solar by over 80% in the same period of time. But as Zach explained, wind and solar supply doesn't always match up with when we're using electricity. So to integrate these variable energy sources, our power systems are going to need to become much more flexible. So just as a hypothetical, what if we built a renewables-based system from scratch using new natural gas generation and batteries to meet all of those flexibility needs? Turns out that the way cost declines are going, this system, which would be about 80% renewable, could end up being as cheap or cheaper than one based entirely on natural gas. So the costs are declining rapidly. A low carbon grid is certainly within our reach. A low carbon grid needs several different kinds of flexibility. These are mainly differentiated by time scale. And all of them are important in different ways. So in the second by second, an electricity system needs to balance demand and supply, and sometimes your forecasts of demand or supply aren't perfect. So you need kind of fast responding reserves that can come in and fill in that balance. Other times, stuff happens on the grid. A plant drops off, a cloud passes over a solar array, and you need kind of backup reserves that can come online in a matter of minutes to fill in that gap. We also there are predictable changes in demand, like when the sun sets, where we need flexible plants that can ramp up quickly and fill in that gap, or flexible resources of all kinds. There's also mismatches between supply and demand over the course of the day, as Zach showed, and the need to shift energy across the day. But importantly, there's the same problem at a seasonal scale as well, where you need to shift energy from one time of the year to another, and that's a much more intractable problem for the grid. So, kind of how will these needs evolve over time? CPI looked at 4 different regions to look at kind of as they pursue aggressive decarbonization plans, how things will change. And as these regions reach high shares of renewable energy, the need for ramping and daily balancing are expected to be the most pressing needs, particularly in the kind of medium term. If you were really to press these regions on an aggressive 100% kind of renewable case, then seasonal shifting would rear its ugly head. And there's a number of different options to meet these needs, from supply side measures, flexible plants, to demand side measures, to hydrogen and other conversions of energy. So across the board, demand side tends to be the cheapest, as well as existing plants like our hydro fleet. But both of these have limits to how far they can be pushed. Batteries are increasingly a low-cost option for fast response reserves and increasingly demand side, daily balancing as well, shifting energy from one time of the day to another. But it's really, batteries are not going to be cost effective for 1 or 2 cycles in a year, which is what's really needed for that seasonal problem. And there, the default is really new thermal generation, unless we really have a breakthrough in long-term storage. So what can policymakers do? So the first thing is certainly there's ample room to expand our renewable energy ambitions in the short term, existing flexibility in the system. And we need to pursue a diverse portfolio of flexibility options. But we also need to start thinking about the market and regulatory frameworks that we're going to need to for this high renewables or decarbonized system, and extend our planning horizons beyond the typical 10-year view to really capture those long-term needs. So I encourage you to dig into the full report of our research, or reach out to me, talk to me after the presentations. Thanks so much for listening.